Remember when they originally started advertising for Teen Titans? I was so taken off guard because at first I thought it was an answer to the question of where Tim Drake had gone after the new Batman the Animated Series. Because you didn't see Tim Drake in Justice League or anything like that. So I'm just like, okay, maybe that's who this is, answers where he went, what he's been doing, all that good stuff. I mean, it felt like it would have made a good amount of sense. But as the series got started, it became very apparent that this was not Tim Drake, despite the fact that a lot of things about him was kind of modeled after Tim Drake. Specifically, the way his suit looks, it was very like Tim Drake because Dick Grayson and even Jason Todd had the booty shorts and all that good stuff. And he even wielded the metal staff very frequently, and the metal staff was kind of like a staple of how Tim Drake did things. Not to mention, this depiction of Robin was a fair bit on the serious side. Not to mention the spiky hair and all that good stuff. It felt like, yeah, it has to be Tim Drake. And then we started getting allusions to Tim Drake's life, well, allusions to Dick Grayson's life as it went along. Now, this series primarily focuses on Robin, intelligent, capable leader, very much like the Leonardo Red Ranger kind of guy. Starfire, a princess from an alien world who was captured by these one group of aliens, and you actually find out later down the line that the first mission that brought these group together was Starfire being transported, her breaking free, and all of these characters coming together in order to fight back this alien horde. Cyborg, half human, half robot, with a lot of strength and technological powers, like almost a merging of Raphael and Donatello. You know, your big, strong, beefy guy who has a little bit of anger issues from time to time, and your tech whiz. You don't really get stuff like that often, so it was actually a very interesting angle to go. Raven, stoic, kind of goth girl with mystical powers and subtle ties to the demonic. Definitely a character who launched a lot of people's interest in, and Beast Boy. Basically Mikey, Michelangelo, and all that good stuff. He loves pizza, he loves to party, just an all-in-all fun guy in general. They live off the shore of Jump City in a giant T-shaped building because they are, in fact, the Teen Titans. And the series is mostly about them dealing with the various different enemies who come to the city to try to take it over. Why this city in particular? Why Gotham City? It's a hotbed for crime for some reason of any kind. And with its 5 seasons, it focuses on 5 different Titans. Unfortunately, Starfire is the only character not to have a season dedicated to herself, but she has various different plot lines dedicated to her that kind of tie together. Mostly in regard to her sister Blackfire, who actually was the one who sold her out to the alien race that captured her initially, and Blackfire's desire to take the throne of Tamaran. The first season is all about Robin and his clash with the supervillain Slade, also known in some continuities as Deathstroke, the Terminator, and his obsession in trying to bring Robin over to his side. And I love the plot lines regarding Robin, as they're always stories about how he and Slade are very similar. The obsessive nature, the constant planning, the martial arts background, all that good stuff. And honestly, when I first saw this, I loved it. Like, Robin solidly became one of my favorite characters because of this season, more so than most leaders of groups like your Cyclopses and all that good stuff. But it didn't come from him kind of breaking bad or anything like that. Well, not willingly. A lot of it came from his moral high ground, his tendency to take himself very seriously. And it's kind of funny too, because it's probably the most serious depiction of Dick Grayson out there. Dick was always kind of the lighter tone to Batman. And to a certain degree, despite the fact that the creator, well, one of the creators, Glenn Murakami, wanted to not have it go so much into secret identities. They wanted it to keep it, like, very recognizable. Honestly, they probably didn't too well, because it's just too recognizable. But it's easy to see that this was Dick when he was, like, almost fully transitioning over to being Batman, and that got him into a lot of trouble. And the Titans are a way of him just regaining that childish innocence that he's supposed to have. It's a fascinating direction for Dick Grayson, and a lot of depictions of Dick Grayson afterwards, it became this situation of Dick not wanting to be Batman because that just wasn't him deep down. He saw the dark roads that it took Bruce, and it was just something that he didn't appreciate ultimately. Honestly, the comic book version of this that kind of tied into the series for the most part, there was one moment where you actually did see Batman, and it was during Dick's birthday, and you could actually see him, with some binoculars looking out towards where Dick was, just making sure that he was okay and happy. And I always appreciated that moment in the comics, because the comic version of the Teen Titans series really did kind of delve into some of their backstory a little bit more. But for the series at large, did its own thing, kept that kind of stuff a little bit far and away from the series as a whole, and honestly, to a certain degree, that was for the best. But it's not like they never referenced back to it to some degree. But you got a lot of great establishing stuff from the first season, the characteristics of your main cast of characters, the direction for the series, how serious Robin could take a lot of situations, and his friends tried to pull him away from that direction for the most part. And I really did enjoy that. Season 2 actually adapted a long-running fan favorite Teen Titans storyline called the Judas Contract, with the Titans taking on another ally called Terra, who has the ability to control Earth for the most part. Terra, Earth, all that good stuff. And she was actually introduced in season 1 as a bit of a runaway girl who, despite the fact that she wanted to seem in control, didn't have a lot of control over her powers. And initially, only Beast Boy actually knew about that. And as Terra worked with the Titans over time, they made her feel welcome, like she had a place on the team. But Robin had figured out she had no control over her powers because it's Robin. But Terra ended up feeling like Beast Boy had outed her when she expressly told him not to. And a little bit of the backstory there is the fact that Terra, she was actually from a country called Markovia, and when she got her powers, it caused a lot of trouble and problems and all that, which caused her to run away from her home country. So it always seemed like a lack of control just seemed to be such a shameful thing for her. And when she came back in season 2, I was all ready to see that, because Beast Boy and her had a great relationship. Terra and Raven had a bit of a rivalry going on that they managed to squash over the course of the season. And when she returned, she seemed to have a greater sense of control over her abilities, only for us to find out she had been trained, but by none other than Slade. And he was actually using her to infiltrate the Titans and take them down after his loss in season 1. And while Terra, for the most part, played her part, she started to kind of feel bad, especially for Beast Boy, because they had this close and deep connection. And she even tried to get him out of there before things went down. But when Beast Boy found out about what she did, he completely turned on her. Because it's one thing for her to have some struggles with her powers, but to be working for their worst enemy who's trying to eliminate them, that doesn't fly for the most part. And towards the end of the series, Slade kind of showed his true colors, exuding more control over her. And after a lot of guilt and shame for what she did, she ultimately, seemingly, turns to stone, taking Slade down. He dies. He straight up dies. You think he might not have died. No, he dies. And she ends up turning herself to stone with her power after bringing down this kind of cavernous building after Slade tries to take control of her powers and all that good stuff. Her powers just go wild. And in order not to have it just blow back on the city, she had to exert herself to such an extreme degree that it just seemed to turn her to stone, and thus ended the tale of Terra. And honestly, this was one of the first instances of Terra being seen as a more ambiguous character. As the original Judas Contract storyline, Terra was an out-and-out villain. She was playing them from the start. She was not a good person. She was devious. She was evil. Slade did ultimately end up betraying her, but she just saw that as an excuse to try to kill him as well, and the whole situation hurt a lot more for Beast Boy as a whole. With this, you started to see a bit of a trend in later depictions of Terra, where it was left a little bit more ambiguous as to her nature. Sometimes she was a little bit better, sometimes she was a little bit more murky. And for the most part, I like the character of Terra and her kind of not quite a good person nature. And even when she returned more recently in the comics, they kept it that she was a very ambiguously on the fringe person. Beast Boy had a very murky relationship with her, and I kind of like that. The third season focused on Cyborg, who had previously had some interactions with the Hive, who were basically a school for bad kids, training up-and-coming supervillains like the Hive 5 that consisted of Jinx, who had the ability to control probability, Mammoth, big strong guy, Gizmo, who worked with a lot of technology, Seymour, who had a variety of different eye-based blasts and weaponry and abilities, Private Hive, who was like an evil version of the Guardian, basically think Captain America for the most part, but without without the super serum. Billy Numerous, who could just duplicate himself en masse. I think he was supposed to be a alternate take on Multiplex, who was also a villain who could multiply himself. Kid Wicked, who just had dark energy based abilities. XL Terrestrial, who could just make himself large. Some alien who could just grow himself for the most part. And Cyborg had gone and infiltrated the Hive, met up with a character called Bumblebee. Over the course of the first 3 seasons, you had met various different other teenage superheroes like Aqualad, Speedy, who was Green Arrow's former sidekick, Masimenos, who are speedsters specifically created for this series, because I think they couldn't get Kid Flash just yet, and he infiltrated and met up with Bumblebee, who's basically DC's version of the Wasp, and he had taken down Hive from the inside, and he had met with this one character called Brother Blood, who in the comics was a cult leader, but here they make him more of a headmaster kind of situation, who had a bit of an obsession with Cyborg, even adapting Cyborg's cybernetics in order to enhance himself. And a lot of Season 3 dealt with Cyborg and his identity crisis. A lot of episodes usually deal with that. Cyborg wanting to be more human, Cyborg wanting to be a better machine, Cyborg trying to find that happy middle ground. A lot of Cyborg stories were a lot about self-acceptance, but Season 4 was probably my favorite season, because that dealt with Raven and her demonic father, Trigon, who was trying to find a way to Earth through Raven in order to completely take it over, because there was a prophecy that Raven would be the portal in order to bring Trigon to Earth, and Trigon even ends up employing a resurrected Slade as basically his herald for the destruction of the world, and the Titans try to overcome all of that. And I really did love it because the finale of that really is a shining moment for Raven in a glorious way. It's kind of unfortunate because the whole story of Raven and Trigun is usually Raven's only story. Whereas you can have a variety of different stories with the likes of Starfire, Beast Boy, and Robin, Dick Grayson, over the course of various different comics and animated series and all that good stuff. Cyborg in more recent years, the constant story we keep seeing played out is the story of his origin, especially the New 52 revamped origin that he was given. That so many times I've seen that play out. But it usually ends up just being his struggle with gaining acceptance for who he is, mostly just for himself, accepting the person that he's become. But with Raven, it's always about her and her relationship with Trigun and just trying to hold him off and stop him. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's just that it's the only storyline that ever goes on for Raven, and I've kind of gotten tired of it at this point because I've seen at least 4 or 5 different iterations of it, like almost like Cyborg's backstory too, and it's just like I'm tired. Can you guys go in another direction? But here it was fantastic because they built up to it in such a masterfully done way that I just really appreciate the way it was depicted here. And the final season ended up focusing on Beast Boy, as the Titans were actually trying to bring together Titans all over the place as a villainous group called the Brotherhood of Evil, who were the enemies to the superhero group that Beast Boy originally ran with, the Doom Patrol. And they had branched out to taking down young heroes because they were just like, okay, old heroes are one thing. Old heroes can get stuck in their ways and they make a lot of mistakes because of that. Young heroes, those need to be nipped in the bud before they can become a true problem. So the Brotherhood of Evil starts bringing in all these supervillains. The Teen Titans start bringing in all these other heroes. And it ends up falling to Beast Boy to rally a small ragtag group when a lot of the heroes end up being captured by the villain. And it really is a great moment of growth for Beast Boy, with the last episode honestly being a pretty major cliffhanger as it sees the return of Terra somehow, but is left very ambiguous as to whether or not that's Terra, whether it's not Terra. The stone petrified Terra is missing. It's possible that this Terra has no memories. There's even a bit of a follow-up in the comic book adaptation where Terra's brother comes to Jump City and Beast Boy kind of shows off this Terra tour to him. And her brother is just kind of given at least a little bit of closure that maybe Terra managed to find a better life for the most part. And it's kind of hinted that maybe this was Terra just ultimately deciding not to be a hero anymore. Just maybe she lost her powers or she's done away with them and she's just trying to live a normal life at this point. And then the series was followed up by a movie called Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo, which a lot of people had hoped would end up kind of following up on the whole Terra situation, but it ended up kind of following up on the romance between Robin and Starfire and kind of bringing a little bit of closure to that as the Titans travel to Tokyo in order to deal with this supervillain called Brushogun who attacks their tower and all that. It was a bit of a mixed movie as it didn't really focus too much on Raven, Beast Boy, and Cyborg, and it really heavily focused on Robin and a lot of things revolving around him, but I thought that was pretty okay as it kind of gave some closure to Robin and Starfire's relationship. And since Starfire never really got a season dedicated to her, and Robin had his season in the first season, it was a good enough way of capping things off. A nice place to kind of leave them. But yeah, I loved Teen Titans. It was great, it was fabulous, it was fantastic. There were a lot of things in it that ended up working its way into the comics to a certain extent. Not Jinx's adaptation, no, but they had a version of Cyborg who had the appearance of how he looks here because Cyborg really doesn't look like this. Starfire started wearing more modest clothes because in the comics they always kept her very skimpy. A lot more of the fun-loving nature of Beast Boy was brought to the forefront. They even gave him the costume you see here because he didn't actually wear this costume in the comics. It was actually more of a red and white number. But Masimenos was brought into the comics. You saw an appearance of Speedy in Justice League Unlimited, and he looked and had the same voice actor as he does in this series. So it was a nice little nod to Teen Titans, but it didn't help the questions of continuity and all that if there was a connection between Justice League and Teen Titans. In my mind, I'm always going to kind of choose to believe that there is, that when Nick Grayson left to do his own thing, he left for Jump City and everything played out as we saw it, and eventually after the series he became Nightwing, because we do see in an episode that takes place in the future that this Robin becomes Nightwing, which was the thing that clued in a lot of people that, oh, it's Dick Grayson. So deep in my heart, I always kind of choose to see it that way, and I don't think there's any harm in seeing it like that, especially since both series are kind of done at this point, although they're brought up to a certain degree every now and again. But this was a great series. It really did do the superhero team thing very strongly and very well, but it never quite hit the demographic that Cartoon Network wanted for it because so many older people actually enjoyed it. But I don't think that was ever a bad thing. I think that's a good thing that older people enjoy it. Honestly, if a lot of these animation studios would understand that, hey, older people like it too, and older people also have money that they're willing to spend on merchandise. If you made figures and stuff like that for this series and art books and this, that, and the other, you would still get a lot of revenue out of this kind of stuff. But a lot of studios were just too stuck in their ways when this came out. But it had a great shelf life, even managing to last a season longer than what the creators thought they were going to get. They thought it was going to end at, it was either season 3 or 4, I believe. I think it was 4. I think they thought it was going to end at 4, and then they got another season. But this really was one of the standout DC series, and it really got me into the Teen Titans, because Teen Titans is just a series that, even when it was created back in the day, originally as a comic book, it stood out because of the premise, the way it was presented. It's the whole reason why we got characters like the New Mutants and all that good stuff. Like, Robin just continues to be a shining example of why teenage superheroes will always be a very appealing factor. From when he was the sidekick to Batman, to creating the Teen Titans, to being a teen superhero who grew up to have his own persona and all that. Dick Grayson just has a fantastic legacy, and this series just did a lot to add on to that. But hey, tell me your thoughts on Teen Titans in the comment section below. Who was your favorite character? What was your favorite storyline? Your favorite villain? What was the best part of Teen Titans for you? And if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications for more of my DC memories. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.